Please now help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker, Marshall.
Thanks, Reed. I'm Marshall. I'm an alcoholic. And just gonna put this down here. Yeah. Boy. My sobriety date is March 6th, 1992. And I actually got sober here in Prescott, Arizona. I'll tell you, to quote the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been. And it's, wow. I never thought 30 years ago here I'd be back in Prescott, speaking in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous. But what an honor it is. Thank you, Mike Bennett, for allowing me to participate in my own recovery, as we like to say. And I was just kind of tripping on this sheet that's on the chairs, man. And this is alcoholic humor. Understanding life. How are you is a greeting, not a question. A good friend will help you move, but a best friend will help you move a body. That's twisted. Only alcohol. My mother would be horrified, So, yeah, wow, it's been a long time since I've had a drink, Like Mike, I'm pushing 30 years. It's incredible. I grew up in a pretty normal family, man. I had 2 parents, 3 little sisters. Grew up in kind of the beach communities in Southern California, South LA County, and had a fun childhood, But I seem to have in my family, the dynamics in my family, I was given every opportunity to succeed, and but I had this little demon, this self-destructive demon inside me called alcoholism. And, it around the age of, those magical ages of 12, 13 years old, anxiety, all that stuff that like early teens go through, in the area that I grew up, alcohol and drugs were the culture, I like to think I'm really into music. And, I was really into music back then, as a kid. But growing up, so I think, like music and movies and stuff give a good, kind of show you what the culture is at the time, And now it's TikTok and Instagram and these crazy dances and stuff that I see. And it's like, damn, this TikTok is nuts, But back then it was music. And as a little tyke, it was, I remember hearing the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and then it was Jimi Hendrix with Purple Haze, and Black Sabbath with Sweet Leaf, and then, I got into high school, and the big song probably in my sophomore year was Cocaine by Eric Clapton, and then a little bit older, it was, I don't know, man, Master of Puppets, by Metallica, or Mr. Brownstone, Guns N' Roses, all that stuff. That was all the culture that I grew up in, and we embraced it, man. And I had a great time. We drank, we did everything. I drank. There was no, I went through, this is my original big book from, I was just thumbing through it because I don't pick it up that often because I have a few big books, but this one's really falling apart. October 1985. I got sober in March of 92, so there's a 6.5-year gap in there that's very important for me to talk about. But I was 23, and it's great to see so many young faces. Glad you're here, man. And the young dudes that came up and got those chips, glad you guys are here, man. I was watching that, and I was like, that was me, man, at 23, Back in 1985, there were not a lot of recovery centers around. I ended up at a place in Redondo Beach, California. It was a hospital. It's like the 3rd floor of this hospital in Redondo Beach, South Bay Hospital, because I think the Betty Ford Center was started in 1982. This was 85. Maybe Hazleton in Minnesota was going back then, but there weren't a lot of places around the country. And so when I was 23, I had a drug problem. I knew I had a drug problem. A lot of drugs going around where I lived, and we didn't say no to anything. So when I came into the South Bay Hospital and got this book, and they said, "What's your drug of choice?" And I looked at them like, "Are you serious?" Yeah, it's like whatever's going around the neighborhood, man. Whatever, it didn't matter to me. Alcohol, King alcohol was always there. It was the cheapest, easiest thing to get, but it didn't matter. We were tripping and smoking and whatever, snorting anything that crossed our paths. But since this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and to respect the traditions, I stick to alcohol mainly. But drugs were a huge part, and it pushed me into this program. And I've done a bunch of different programs. I was involved in CA in California when I tried to get clean back then, and also NA. And those are great programs. They're based on this program. This is the program that I chose because I found long-term sobriety and clean time in AA. And in those other programs, at least the meetings that I had available to me, I didn't find that. And I would leave feeling really sketchy from some of those meetings, and it was like, damn, I shouldn't have gone to that meeting, because now I want to go get high. Anyway, when I was 23, man, it's tough to get. It was tough for me at 23 because I'd only been, I'd been drinking. I was a teenage alcoholic. Starting at 12, 13, we had massive parties. My high school was a big high school, maybe 2,000 kids, maybe 500 in my class, Always huge parties on the weekends, big keg parties. Someone's parent would be gone. We'd take over a house and, until the police would show up, and kick hundreds of us out. But I just remember blacking out right from the get-go. At 13, I was a blackout drinker. I never thought I was an alcoholic. Hindsight's 20/20. It wasn't until I really got into AA. It really wasn't until in 92 when I got serious with the program and finally got sober that I could look back and think, fuck, I was a blackout drinker every time I drank. And we didn't drink wine or things for taste. We drank beer and shots. I drank for effect. Kamikazes, tequila, maybe some Jack Daniels was popular back then, whatever. They didn't have all these fancy seltzers. I see all this stuff out now, and it's like, damn, what is all this stuff? And all these new drugs and stuff. It's like, wow, man. I'm glad I got clean when I did, But I knew that I had an issue with substances at 23, so I had sold at that time. I had sold everything I owned. I had to take the bus to work, and in Los Angeles, it's not easy. It's not fun. So I ended up in this treatment center. But I really didn't think I was an alcoholic because I remember the very first AA meeting I went to was in the basement of that hospital. And there were probably like 8 older gentlemen, 8 H&I guys there. And by older, 50s, 60s, my age now, and talking about God and the program and stuff. And at 23, man, I just my eyes rolled back and I was like, oh God, I just want to dry out for the 28 days or whatever and stay away from these substances. But I couldn't imagine not drinking anymore because my whole concept of having fun and socializing at 23, that's what my whole life was about then, was drink alcohol, was involved in everything. And I remember, sitting there thinking, man, how, so if I get married, when I get married, I can't have a glass of champagne at my, all those crazy thoughts, man. How will I celebrate New Year's Eve? oh, I'm going to lose all my friends. I'm going to turn into this really boring person, like a Bible thumper, Amish. I'm going to go, live on a farm, or something, man. So anyway, I got out of there, and I remember I got 89 days, man. I just couldn't get that 3-month chip, and at 89 days, I was still living in the same area, and I ended up going back, and I broke down, and I went back and started hanging out with some guys a guy that I lived with and some other friends, and they were like, oh, dude, you can have a beer, man. Just stay away from this, and sure enough, I was like, I talked myself into it. It was a conscious choice. It wasn't a slip. I heard another guy, I used to hear a guy at some meetings here saying, older guy with like 40 years up, and he said, there are no slips, man. It's a decision and a choice, to pick up. And it was, looking back on it, it was. I was just kind of like, screw it, 89 days. Picked up that beer and ended up on about a 5-year run, and there were other substances at that point in time that were becoming popular, smokable forms of cocaine and stuff and other drugs, and everything that I thought I would never do, I ended up getting involved with, man, and my life went down. Man, it was just a 5-year struggle, and drinking, drugging, a lot of negativity, a lot of negative energy, man. And I mean, I've always been kind of pushed back on authority, and I find that very common amongst alcoholics and people in recovery, when I was growing up, the country was coming out of the Vietnam War. There were just all these social issues and Watergate and all this stuff, and I was a teenager, but I didn't trust or believe in any organization, let alone the government or some religious type of organization. And I didn't know what AA was about, but when I heard him bring up all the God stuff, I kind of just mentally checked out, and I would sit in the back of the room by the door, typical. Be the last person in, the first person out. But I'll tell you what, in some of those meetings, something did stick. Because when I went into those meetings, I never felt happy, I mean, there was a lot of positive energy in the rooms, and people were actually having a lot of fun. And they were talking about doing stuff, coffee and dinners and conventions that were coming up. Where's the guy that announced our convention? Stuff like that. And so that did kind of stick in the back of my head, man. But anyway, I ended up, spending my 20s like that, kind of in and out, and it was miserable. I think as I approached 30, that was huge, because in my 20s, I was seeing my good friends who used to do the same thing I did, just as much, if not more. All of a sudden, these guys were graduating from college. They were going off and getting careers, joining accounting firms or becoming lawyers or dentists or whatever, And 30 was coming right at me, man, and it was like, oh, shit. My family had had enough. I was out trying to work in menial jobs, trying to survive, and I was scared. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? A lot of anxiety and fear. And anyway, through another series of events, I ended up in another rehabilitation place in California. And man, I learned a lot in that place. It was the Betty Ford Center. It was an outpatient program they had, and I'd moved out to the desert. And but I started to learn about alcoholism. And the head doctor there was a guy with like 40 years up. He was awesome, a medical doctor. And I remember in a meeting one time, he broke down the way alcohol metabolizes differently in different people, in people with alcohol and addiction issues, and normal people. And and I learned that my body just metabolizes alcohol differently, and that was a huge revelation to me, because I'd heard people talk about the allergy, and the obsession, the two parts of this disease. And but when he broke it down, it made me feel kind of normal, it was just the way, I could understand what he was saying, because everyone's metabolism is different, man. I know people that can eat whatever they want, and they can't gain a pound, and then other people that don't, and they can't lose any weight. Our bodies are all different. So it's like, oh wow, okay, so the way the alcohol breaks down into the sugars and stuff in my system causes a craving effect. And it's like, okay, so that's when I starting at 13, going to these parties, when the keg ran out, I was the guy going around picking up people's beer cups and drinking the leftover beer, because I was still craving the alcohol as people were going home and to get on with their lives, man. And I was running around the room picking up, drinking cigarette butts and bottles and stuff, That's part of my makeup. And I craved it. When I ingested alcohol, I started to crave it. I couldn't have just one beer, It was a six-pack and a pint, or, or whatever. So I learned a lot there. But you know what? That knowledge did not keep me sober. I got out of there, and I really learned about the obsession. So I kind of learned in there a little bit about the allergy. Oh, but that obsession, man. And I know tonight, so we have, I don't know how much time you have up. Do you have less than 10 days? Okay. So then you might, the way I look at it is, if you can go a week without alcohol, the alcohol's out of our system, right? Physically. What we're dealing with is this obsession up here. And that obsession kicked my butt, wow. That's all I thought about, In fact, all those years, all through my 20s, when I went to those early meetings, you guys, I would sit in the room and listen to these people talk, and they would talk about, I get the shakes, and I wake up in the morning and I have a drink first thing, and I would think, nope, never did that, never did that. I pick out all the differences, not realizing that when I woke up in the morning, the first thing I did was take a bong hit. It was just different. But I numbed myself from 6:30 in the morning till I went to bed, till I passed out, basically. I was numb, And, but I picked out all the differences in the room and convinced myself, oh yeah, alcohol's not my problem, But I can tell you, every relapse I've had started with one beer or one drink. Alcohol for me was the gateway to whatever else was out there, and around at the time. Damn, I love my alcohol, Yeah, that sense. So, I think even as a young kid, for no reason that I understand, I was definitely restless, irritable, and discontent, and full of anxiety, full of fears, But really, that stuff really got going when I was in my 20s and approaching my 30s, and watching everyone around me move on with life, move to the next level, having kids, becoming responsible. Here I'm living with two other guys, in some shitty apartment, hanging out at these dive bars. We used to have a lot of fun. At the beginning, in my teens, and probably in my, my early 20s, drinking was fun. We'd go to these nice bars where, very social stuff, and But for the last few years, just like Bill says in the book, man, I ended up in dive bars where we would just shoot pool with people like me, In another song, Garth Brooks, man, I got friends in low places, right? Yeah, that was our song back then, man. So there's the culture, of that time. We'd hang out in these bars with other losers who weren't going anywhere in life, man. And I would look at these guys, so I was, let's say I'm 25, looking at dudes who were 35 or 45 and their girlfriends. But I could kind of see where my life was headed. It's like, wow, if I don't change things, this will be me if I live that long. I also have to say that, alcohol, I had three friends die before 20, directly due to alcohol and alcoholism. I had to be a pallbearer at 2 of their funerals, the looks on the parents' face, but car crashes, other alcohol-related accidents. That was 3 guys out of my class. Then in my 20s, I had probably 8 people that I knew pass away in my 20s. I got to tell you, since I've been back here in Prescott 5 years now, there are like 5 or 6 people who I know, members of these rooms, who are not with us anymore. And that scares me. That blows me away. In 5 years, I can name 5 or 6 people who used to come to, into this room, and they're not here anymore. So this disease will definitely take us out, and cause a lot of misery to the people who care about us, who are left behind. And that's the hard part, man. Seeing my buddy's mom, parents and sister at that funeral, I remember it like it was yesterday, it was horrible. And to think that could have been my parents and my little sisters and all my cousins and extended family, very easily. Anyway, I finally got sober in 1992. I ended up here in Prescott, Arizona. There was one rehab place. It was called the Prescott House at the time, one male place for guys. There was a female place that was very small, like 10 women. I think they called it the Duck House at the time in 92. And then it became a place called Pia's Place. Pia Melody started it. But so I ended up at the Prescott House. They told me, come up for 3 months. I ended up being here for 4 months. But everything changed for me, man. By that time, I was 29 going on 30, 29 and a half, and I was ready for the program. I was ready. I was scared. And I was ready for a change. And so I started following some directions, and I really got into AA. This club wasn't here, and I'm going to give a shout out to Rich too for keeping Safe Harbor open during the COVID. Thank you, Rich. Because for the last 18 months, all my old meeting places closed. These churches and schools pulled everything, for liability issues or whatever. Some of them have reopened, but Rich kept this place open for AA the whole time. And it's a trip. What a trip we're living through. The big elephant in the room is fucking COVID, man. And nobody talks about this at meetings. It's like, oh, life is just normal and this, but it's like, the way I think about it, it's like, fuck my life. I got before COVID and after COVID, man, because everything's changed. And I don't know if it's going to change back. This is the new normal. I hate to even call it normal, but it's just new and different. And I'm not comfortable with it, but I'm powerless over all this, all these changes. And thank God for this program, because I have family members and friends who are normies, and they are absolutely out of their minds for the last 18 months. And my sisters with their kids, people that have children who can't go to work because the kids, everything. The whole dynamic of what's going on, not just in this country, but worldwide. It's affected every person on this planet. And all this change. And if there's one thing, as an alcoholic, like I like now, and with 29 years clean and sober, man, I like my routines. I like, I have the meetings I go to, but I get up in the morning, I'll go to the gym. I like my little routines, man. I'm comfortable in my routines. But when you get massive change, it's kind of like, whoa, it's a trip. And, but again, I'm completely powerless. So it's like, okay, thank God, for the serenity prayer, man. And it's been so weird doing Zoom meetings and all this stuff, and being disconnected from people, my fellow AAers. I'll just tell you, man, so after I got sober here in Prescott, I actually ended up working in that. They gave me a job in that Prescott House when I got out after 4 months. And I lived here for 2 years. I didn't want to go back to the beaches, didn't want to be around those old friends, so-called friends. Some of them were friends, some of them still are friends, and they respect my sobriety. But I ended up, after 2.5 years, now in 1992, Prescott was a lot smaller. Prescott Valley was nothing. Really, Prescott Valley, PV is what's grown. But I was ready to get out of here. I was in my early 30s and single, and it was like, man, I got to get out of here, man. 2.5 years, and I was ready. I was on fire with sobriety. I was on fire with faith. I had so much faith, man. I was like, so I ended up, when I came up here, I had nothing. I had no car. I had a bag of clothes. And but through working at the Prescott House for a couple of years, I was able to buy a car, buy a little truck, and get some stuff, And but I decided I was going to sell everything and pack a bag of clothes and head off to Australia because I had a sister that moved in Australia. And man, that is faith. I was not in fear. I was in faith because I knew nobody. I didn't know what I was going to encounter. But I always knew as a kid growing up on the beaches, it's like, man, they got great surfing and great beaches in Australia, and I want to go over there. And I ended up over there. And the first week I was there, I went to a large meeting in a church in downtown Sydney. And they asked, just like we do here, do we have any visitors? And I raised my hand. I'm Marshall from Arizona. Well, at the end of that meeting, a bunch of people came up to me and said, hey, mate, we're going out for coffee, And so I ended up going out for coffee with a group of people. And man, it's unbelievable. Life is a trip. What a long, strange trip, man. I ended up moving in with somebody that I met in the program there. I got work. I was actually, I kind of laughed because I was the illegal immigrant in another country working under the table, to support myself, man. So I kind of know put the shoe on the other foot. But working for cash under the table, and I stayed there for 1.5 years and met a ton of people. My AA friends over there. Here, 29 years later, man, they're still great friends. And I had a Zoom meeting with them a couple months ago and was asking them what was going on over there with the COVID. And man, it's like I'm so glad I'm here in Prescott, Arizona right now. They were telling me they cannot go more than 5 kilometers from their house. They're locked down. They have been almost 18 months, but 5 kilometers is like 3 miles. And they have roadblocks. The police have roadblocks set up. Now, this is a first world, very wealthy, nice country, just very similar to the United States or England. Man, if they go hit a roadblock and get pulled over and they're more than 3 miles from their residence, they'll get either a $5,000 fine or an $11,000 fine now. I mean, it's incredible. And it's like, oh, man, because, I was always thinking, well, I'd like to go back there, but it's like, now it's like, no way, man, I don't want to go to Australia for a while. So I'm very grateful and lucky that I'm here in Prescott right now, and for the last few years, why this thing hit. I want to get into some recovery. Man, I love this book, and I got to tell you, so. I had a hard time, these guys talking about, when I came in, God, because I pushed back against all that. I didn't have a religious upbringing, still not real big on organized religion, or big organizations, man. I'm not into the corporate, the greed, corruption, and, big organizations just get so corrupted. I don't want anything to do with them. But this program is one program that, man, I can get behind. The traditions, the way we're set up, this group tonight, the Rarely group, we're our own group, man. We don't answer, we're not part of any other group. Whoever's running this meeting, we're a separate entity. We're part of the larger whole, but it's like I like that. We have no leaders. Our leaders rotate in and out from their different positions. Any extra money, that doesn't go to rent and coffee, will go to buy big books or to AA in New York, So I just love AA. It's one organization that a really defiant person like me can accept. Because they don't want anything from you. You guys don't want anything from me. Maybe $1 to help pay the rent or pay for some coffee if I have it. I love it, man. But anyway, I had a real issue with the God stuff, which a lot of people do. I think maybe most of us are agnostic when we came. I was certainly agnostic. It's not that I didn't believe in a God or not a God, but I just wanted no part of any of it. But I had a guy point out to me at the very end of the big book, there's a section which most people don't get to, but it's called Spiritual Experience. It's at the very end of the book, after the stories. And Bill, what a great writer, man. Now I just love this guy's writing now. I didn't for a long time. I didn't get it. But he talks about this spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, okay, which I was having such a problem with. And he says here, this term, spiritual and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. So all of a sudden, this guy, this sponsor I had, hammered that into me. He said, look, this spiritual experience that they're talking about, it's just a personality change, and that's right from the book, So then, me being, kind of dense and, I was like, okay, well, what is personality change, So, he was the kind of sponsor where he had the dictionary, look it up, so personality, okay. Our personalities are our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, So it's like, okay, so I need to change my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And I slowly came to see, through working with the steps and going through this book, my favorite, the 12 and 12, lots of 12 and 12 studies and big book studies. I lost my place. I just, the personality change I could buy into. The other thing I had a problem with was the fourth step, or the fifth step, the exact nature of our wrongs. I didn't like this. What are they talking about? These character defects. Am I defective? What? But again, Bill Wilson, man. So, this book came out in 1939, and like 12 years later, Bill, after dealing with tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of alcoholics. They had a lot more experience, and he wrote, and he really got into the nitty-gritty in this book. And he explains what the character defects are in step 4. And he says here, to avoid falling into confusion over the names these defects should be called, let's take a universally recognized list of major human failings. The 7 deadly sins of pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. And so I came to see that, and then further in here, he calls them our natural instincts. They're just human instincts that are in every one of us, and every one of us on this planet outside of this room. Man, that was a real eye-opener for me, to realize that the character defects were just my natural instincts, but run amok is, I think, are the words he uses in this book. And excess, and I can totally see it in all the normies that I deal with. The exact same stuff. The only difference is it won't kill them. They can go out and have a couple glasses of wine or smoke a joint or eat their gummies or whatever they do, But for me, those excessive natural instincts that I have will, if I do the same thing, I'll end up, the allergy will kick in, and I'll end up on a run, and I might end up like so many people who I knew, 6 feet under. And so all these revelations, when I really started doing big book studies, and 12 and 12 studies, awesome, highly recommended, simple book, less than 200 pages, and really digs into the nitty-gritty. This is our program, but this is kind of the how-to, I guess, or just more facts. It's really good stuff. And I also want to say, in my early sobriety, I thought the fellowship was the program, but then I came to learn, and it's taken a long time. I have the fellowship, which are the meetings, the meetings after the meeting, and then I have the program, which is right here in this book. And for a long time, the fellowship's what kept me sober, But I knew there would be, because I was hanging out, I was living with guys at the Prescott House. I was surrounded by sobriety. But eventually, I had to leave that little nest, that little bubble, and go out into the real world, just like you guys, how many people are in a treatment center here? Yeah, right on. Okay, I like it. Welcome, you guys. I had to go out and live in the real world. And, so I needed the program then. That's when I needed to start working the steps with the sponsor. And, but the fellowship is just incredible. I mean, what's so neat to me is we can go anywhere anywhere on the planet. I forget how many countries AA is in, but it's well over 100. It might be all 160 some or whatever, and be totally welcome. I've thought about doing some traveling. I still don't know now. It's like, because man, I'm so over this. It's like I just want to get out of here and just see something different, and go to a place where I don't speak the language and I don't know what they're saying, and there's no cable news, and I don't know. I'm not polluted. My brain. But it's like, damn, everything's closed. There's nowhere to go, man. But eventually there will be. And eventually this too shall pass, it better. It will. And I know that I can go anywhere, because I thought, maybe I'll go down to Mexico, man, and go, bum around, because I've done it before in Australia, and it's like, because I know I can go into a meeting and meet people, and things will happen if I put my hand out, And if I put my hand up at the end of the meeting, or say, yeah, I'm Marshall from Arizona, things will happen. Yeah. Two minutes? No? Okay. No, man, I got six minutes. Anyway, I can't say enough about this program, you guys, and the opportunity that everybody in this room has. I've heard so many wonderful stories. I've heard so many incredible stories in this program over the last 36 years since 1985. Is it 36? 30, fuck, that's incredible. I've been to conventions. I've had so much fun. So I thought, at 23 coming in, it's like my life is over. I'm never gonna be able to date. I'm never gonna be able to go to a concert. We used to love to go to concerts, man. That was huge when I was younger. We went to every show that rolled through, but I must say it's been the exact opposite of what I thought when I was sitting back there with 90 Days, man. I've had so much fun, so many wonderful experiences, completely sober. I remember everything. I remember the set list, man. I could tell you the set list from, Metallica's 1996 Irvine concert, whatever, Whereas before, in my early 20s and teens, man, it would be like, damn, I didn't remember a thing, man. I was a blackout drinker. And it's so nice to wake up in the morning feeling decent, and I want to touch really quickly on besides not drinking, what's been really important to me. A big part of my drinking and using was habit. It kind of became habit. So I've, in recovery, tried to develop healthy habits, eating right, drinking lots of water, getting exercise is really important. And another big thing for me was financial stuff. Because, man, I had dug this huge hole, and it took a long time for me to develop healthy financial habits, get out of debt. Today, if I'd be so full of anxiety, man, if I had the same issues I had 35 years ago with money and stuff, not knowing how I'm going to pay. And that takes time. It takes time to fix those issues, man. But it's one day at a time. It's one foot in front of the other, But to me, they were huge deals so that I could sleep at night. And you guys are all young. Most of you are pretty young. It's start now. Get healthy. Get your emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. And your life will change. I guarantee it. I also want to say really quickly, just because I got sober and don't drink and drug doesn't mean life hasn't happened. When I was a teenager, we used to say, shit happens. And driving around Southern California, you'd see bumper stickers, shit happens, and all this negative shit in the late 70s, man, or early 80s, shit happens. Question authority, all these bumpers, all this stuff. So today, I have a different view. It's like, life happens. It is what it is, man. I've read a lot of great books on psychology and stuff, and some of these things that I might think they're painful, they're unpleasant to go through, but they've been learning experiences for me, and they've caused me to grow. There's nothing like pain. I wouldn't have come back in AA at 29 if it wasn't for the pain. It was the pain. The pain was the great motivator for me. And and it still is. So, and I've made, the only thing I've done right for 29 years is I haven't picked up a drink. Everything else, man, I've screwed stuff up, but that's part of being a human being. Got married, got in a toxic marriage, divorced. I had to go through the death of my father's death, the death of other relatives, losing houses, losing jobs. If we live long enough, we're going to lose a lot of things, man. And this program gives me the tools to deal with that, and to grow. And what a gift, man. So it's not a walk in the park. It's just life, you know. It is a lot simpler than I thought it was, and I got that thanks to this book. And but it's not easy, and but it's so worth it, you know. It's about a personality change. You can call it your spiritual awakening, but you know, I haven't been struck by God or seen Allah or Jesus or Buddha, or, you know, I woke, you know. But I've definitely have a different outlook on life today than I did. And to me, it's not about accumulating things and stuff. It's about, I mean, it sounds stupid. It's about loving my family and the people around me, people important to me, and trying to be a better man today. And that doesn't always happen. You know, the gal I was married to would tell you different, you know, she'd tell you some stories, you know, but those are my human, that stuff, those are my humanness, you know, and that comes out. But I have tools today to deal with resentments and fear and anger and stuff like that. And so anyway, now I'm at 2 minutes. All right. Anyway, I wish you guys all the best. Thanks.